So, so for this, I invite our session chair, Professor Irina Zavzik Tashneria. She is an associate professor of maths, automation, computer science, and technology development, Kryvyi National University, Ukraine. Next, we have Dr. Shailesh Shah, associate professor, faculty of technology and engineering, the Maharaja Shahari Ji Rao University of Baroda, India. With that, next we have Dr. Meet Kamal, Associate Professor of Chemistry, Christ Church College, Kanpur, India. Next, we have Dr. Era Upadhyay, Associate Professor, Amity University, Rajasthan, Jaipur, India. Dr. Amit Parekh, Professor and Principal, Mehsana Urban Institute of Sciences, Ganapata University, Gujarat, India. And lastly, we have Dr. Jessica C. She is the convener of ICSETI. She is also Professor of Physics, BSSC, BSc, BKNMU, and EU. So with that, we start with the first presenter. I call upon Peril Feril Iram Mozaki, and the title for the paper presentation of this presenter is Fuzzy Logic in Settled Robotic Arms Cutting Edge Solar Cell Installment Manufacture, the development of fuzzy set theory on renewable energy technology. So, uh, Feril Irham Muzaki, you can share your screen and please start presenting.
Explain
in a research study conducted by Gallego 2018, it was seen that
science and technology innovation today and tomorrow, creating platform for the present our research findings. Dr. C.M. Patel, chairperson of the Research Cultural Society, the live wire of the session, the whole conference. Dr. Jessica C. She is continuously keep in touch with us. Next, may I kindly request permission to present my presentation from the chairman. Dear learned expert and researchers and audience online, my research topic is understanding the diffusion, performance, and barriers of biogas development. My project supervisor, Dr. Samsunara Khan, Madam, Associate Professor and Chairman, Department of Environmental Science, Faculty of Science and Engineering Technology, Bangladesh University of Professional, here Bangladesh. And myself, Engineer Jayanta Srikumar, currently I am Acting Director General of South Asian Regional Standard Organization, Dhaka, as well as I am students of Professor Dr.
Sir, since we're having time constraint, can you just directly go to the objectives and the major findings of this study? It would be kind enough on your side.
Actually, background, if we look at the Bangladesh is having agricultural economy and has available abundant resources of cow dung and poultry. However, the country's biogas generation lacking luster despite plenty of resources. Therefore, there's a gap between abundant resources and this biogas production. Currently, there are 85,000 biogas plants in the country, in Bangladesh. Therefore, there's a national problem as well as problem in the literature. If you look at the literature, only technology and developing biogas technology is available. Only few research can be found in the context of Bangladesh, as cited here. So the question of my research, our research is the barriers. What are the barriers of dissemination of biogas technology, and also why this barrier exists and how this barrier can be minimized and diffusion level to be improved. So the objective, overall objective is refers to the biogas technology as a solution to community problem, waste problem. There are 5 specific objectives that I will link at my discussion. So the methodology used is a survey, and it has questionnaires, and also participant include the household biogas. The author has visited all biogas plants and conducted interview there. So participant mainly males, various age from 30 to 70, then different family size, different farm size, different household income. And this interview conducted during 3 months period. An interview took 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Then, as I mentioned earlier, 85,000 biogas plants are currently available in Bangladesh, but it is actually 0.7% of the existing potential. So there's a huge potential. So this infrastructure development company limited has installed 57,000 biogas plant from the website of Bangladesh Renewable Energy Authority. Then Bangladesh Council for Scientific Research, they are the pioneers of the biogas development in 1960s and 70s. So I have our research is mainly focusing on two districts. One is Manikong district and the other one is Gajipur district. Now, if you look at the data collection, Madhu Singera, this biogas plant actually was designed to use in household level. So two cylinder of LPG gas can be replaced using biogas. So they save about $20. One taka is 84 taka is $1. So the payback period is 3 to 4 years. Then next visit was done to Gonapura Sigera. Then this biogas plant, interestingly, produce 1,500 liters. They use for 3 meals cooking of 2 households. This twin biogas plant, as you can see, the manifold it has distributed into 2. So the rest of the cow dung is used in the fish pond, and also they use this one dry and use as fertilizer. So this one actually not function the time of the visit. This was due to the problem of cook stove was not properly working. Then after that, this plant was abandoned. Then later, owner has sold this poultry farm and changed the business also. So this one also has a problem, Singera Kusila, in Manikong district. This problem has been created in 2019. The owner had this biogas plant and built a new toilet on top of the outlet tank due to space limitation. So thereafter, there was a problem in biogas pressure, and later on, due to this human expertise, due to the biogas plant, they have not willing to, these technicians not willing to approach and see the problem troubleshooting. So it is abandoned from their owner. This is a poultry biogas plant. So this biogas plant was working. It is also a poultry biogas plant, litter-based biogas plant. It is working properly. The gas pressure is also very good. They have 8,000 birds which produce 80 kilogram. One bird produces 100 grams of litter per day. So this is also another biogas plant. This, as we can see, the gas is transported more than 400 meters. So pressure at the kitchen of the owner is also in a good condition. And this plant volume is 3.2 cubic meter, which produce 3,200 liters of biogas per day. So this is another biogas plant, Mifora Sadar. This plant capacity is 2.4 cubic meter, and this also poultry-based biogas plant. This also was not functioning the time the survey was done. The problem, according to the owner, was he said that inlet has been blocked due to the spawn. But looking at the input on the literature and the poultry-based biogas plant, the poultry feed contains crushed muscles as rich in calcium to make the egg cell harden. So some amount of this feed goes as output in the poultry litter. So this litter is having this calcium-rich muscles, so it make a scum. After 2-3 years time, this layer will not allow biogas microbes to metabolic reaction to happen and produce the biogas. Later on, it will reduce the gas production, and it will land to the devastation. So it has to be continually update, remove the biogas digester should be empty, and again feed with the new digesters frequently. Yes. So this is the next district, Gajipur Upazila. So this biogas plant also based on cow dung, but the time we visited, it also was not working. The barrier was the new cow shed that was built, decided by the house owner, was little bit far away from the biogas plant. So later on, this house owner was not able to charge the digester due to the distance problem, and it was abandoned from 2017. This was another biogas plant based on cow dung, and and there are 25 biogas plants in this area, 55 dairy farms. This owner of this biogas plant sell the LPG gas to the society. He used the biogas plant in his kitchen. He knows the value of the biogas, and he used the renewable energy, and he sell the non-renewable energy. So this is also another biogas plant which was built in last COVID-19 pandemic period. This farmer has 4 cows. He used 40 to 50 kilogram of cow dung, and he add 20 to 30 liter of water. But according to the handbook, it is 1:1. Therefore, there's a problem in input material and mixture, homogeneous of the mixture, which needs the proper conditions to produce biogas by the microbes. So, but this plant is very brand new plant. You can see very clean, cement also very new. Yeah, then this is the next biogas plant. This also used by the 3 families, which has 14 members. So this biogas plant this owner has 15 cows, but they use only 5 to 6 cows biogas cow dung for the biogas plant. So one cow generally produces 10 kilogram of cow dung per day. So this is the next biogas plant. This also was built during the COVID-19 pandemic last year, March to June. So this owner of this biogas plant is Madam, and this Madam having very good time with the biogas plant. He says that she can relax now. She doesn't want to go to gather firewood. She says. So this is the last visit of the survey. This biogas plant actually also was made during the pandemic time. Initially, this was designed to give biogas to 2 houses. Later on, due to the distance problem, gas pressure had been reduced. So they have disconnected 1 house, and they are using only 1 house biogas for 1 house. So the barriers of dissemination of biogas plant from the study has been compiled, and analysis has been done. Now, table 3 shows that as we discussed, this is 100% working, and they use for daily cooking and boiling water and how sterilizing the cow nippers. So the next one is was damaged, so it is having a problem. So others were working, and this stone was inlet was blocked due to stone blocking. That is the barrier. So others were working properly, daily cooking, and also boiling water, mainly for daily cooking. So if we look at the statistics data, monthly potential from the biogas available, it has been analyzed for using SPSS. From less than 900 taka, 3 house family has potential to get less than 900 taka. from 900 taka, that is Bangladesh currency, 1,712 families can save energy, money, and another 12 family can save more than 1,700 taka. So monthly income from bio-study, potential monthly income during our visit, one incident, the cow dung, 400 kilo of cow dung was sold 900 taka to 1,100 taka. So based on that, and also another information from the expert in the field, we did the analysis, and from this analysis, 14 family who is having biogas plant has potential to earn less than 1,320 taka per month. So 7 family can earn 1,320 to 2,600 taka. So another 3 family can save if a proper system is developed, 2,600 to 4,000. Small. This is about 4,000. 3 family can save about 4,000. So this is the graphical representation. So if you look at the barriers, can be divided into technical and social. First one, biogas stove supporting technology need to be developed, and other sources of energy like LPG are readily available for cooking. So that is also another challenge. Next one, biogas production was insufficient. On a lack of space due to land limitation, this problem had happened. Then biogas production also very low, and fired gas was too small due to stone blockade in the inlet. So the next one, biogas production was inadequate, producing enough to cook breakfast. It was enough to cook breakfast. Cowshed was too far, so collecting cow dung was difficult. So if you look at the whole picture of the analysis, input material, quality of input material, water done ratio is also very important. Proper mixing is also very important. Availability of supporting technology like stove, like we have LPG stoves. Similarly, this biogas stoves also should be available in the community, in the rural areas, to uplift this technology, linking uplifting the poor life to the level it is required. So biogas stove repairing centers, repairing technicians also should be available. Those are the challenges. The study area, if you look at the barriers, has been put it into the illustration. Then if you look at the objectives, as I mentioned in the objective 1 and 4 are partially met. People use biogas daily based cooking and boiling water. Some of them replace or reduce their use of fuel, oil, gas. So the amount of waste dumped into the nearby water path river reduced by producing the biogas. Objective 2, not everyone in the study area willing to process the cow dung and port it as fertilizer, because the other alternatives also are available. Chemical fertilizers are available, and other dungs are also available. As a result, do not make fertilizer out of cow dung and port litter, and don't use it as fertilizer. In some cases, if you consider this, the biogas program will be unable to meet the objective 2. Then objective 3, people habit does not change, even if the amount of cow dung and poultry litter thrown into the nearby water path from the river decreases. Last objective, a specific objective, the people continue to dump remaining cow dung and poultry litter nearby water path from the river, preventing objective 5 being met. People are still failing to consider environmental concern. My conclusion, lack of understanding of the biogas technology as technical barriers, especially reluctant to maintain digester due to lack of training and technical assistance. People habits are source of social barriers, reluctant to change their digester, charge their digester twice a day, morning and evening, especially morning time. Early morning touching cow dung is a little bit feel uncomfortable. So That is another challenge. Despite the fact that the biogas sufficient quantity for daily cooking, motivation to expand is not available. Therefore, the potential is enormous in each and every household that out there exists. Preference to easy to use the technology such as LPG and kerosene are available. Yeah, dumping dung into the river path nearby pit still seem to easier than processing for biogas. So this evidence by lack of motivation to expand the digester, because the community has yet to consider environment in biogas development. Dung is also still dumped into the water path river, used for not used for biogas production. So the recommendation of our research theoretical concept are not always in line with the reality. So adjustment have to be always made with respect to condition in the local location and the community. In this study, concept of biogas development was carried out with the goal of conserving the energy and protecting the environment, using waste to generate renewable energy, which will reduce the air, water, and from the river pollution, while reducing the use of fossil fuel. So, for the reason implementing biogas necessitates more than just technology approach. So, a policy that focus not only the financial aspect of biogas development by providing a subsidy, but also the other supporting facilities such as availability of supporting technologies, biogas stores, biogas stores, repairing centers, workshop technician capable of dealing with technical problems related to biogas technology. Personnel capable of handling biogas are also required. Environmental policies that requires people to be constantly aware their surroundings, such as not dumping cow manure and poultry litter into the water path nearby rivers, are also very important. There are currently no penalties for dumping cow manure and poultry litter into the water path nearby Kondo River, so community is free to do so. Therefore, though there is an appeal to refrain from doing so. Intensive community outreach and support of the concept of development of biogas technologies. So thank you very much for your kind attention, dear learned experts and researchers. Thank you.
Well, that was a very commendable.
Upon the synthesis of the complex compound with unsymmetrical, that is lack of center of symmetry, shift base as a ligands. The research work is synthesis of a new series of the copper 2 complexes with unsymmetrical tetradentate shift base ligands derived from the benzene 2-diamine salicylaldehyde and substituted salicylaldehyde has been prepared. The synthesized ship-based ligands and their copper-2 complexes were characterized by elemental analysis, molar conductivity, and magnetic susceptibility measurements, solubility, infrared, and electronic spectral data. The motivation behind the choosing the topic is many enzymes and proteins have copper at their active site, which play a key role in the many biochemical reactions. So a program of work to synthesize complexes having similarity to their natural counterpart is essential to as to pro biochemical properties in prepared complexes with hope to have a new pharmaceutical products. The research work has mainly three parts. The preparation of first part is the preparation of an unsymmetrical ship base ligand ship base, and the second synthesis of copper 2 complexes with the base, and the third determination of the geometry of the complex compound. I will explain the first. The unsymmetrical tetradentate ship base were prepared by the two-step process. In the first step process, 10 mmol of salicylaldehyde is 25 ml of the ethanol to this, and ethanolic solution of 10 mmol of benzene 1,2-diamine was added, and the resulting solution was refluxed for 3 to 4 hours. On cooling the reaction mixture, crystalline solids were formed. The precipitate is washed with the distilled water and ethanol several times and is then recrystallized with the ethanol. In the second step process, 10 mmol of the resulting product obtained from stage first was added to 10 mmol of 5 methoxysalcihaldehydes or 5-bromosalcides or 5-methoxysalcihaldehydes in 225 ml of ethanolic solution. The resulting solution was refluxed for 2 to 3 hours. On cooling the reaction mixture, the solid precipitate was obtained. The precipitate was passed with distilled water and ethanol several times and is then recrystallized with the ethanol. The structure of the ship-based ligand as on the screen. And the next, the synthesis of the copper complexes. The unsymmetrical copper 2 complexes were prepared by the refluxing appropriate amount of copper acetate and the respective unsymmetrical tetradentate ship-based ligand in ethanolic medium for 3 to 4 hours. A little of the sodium carbonate was added and dropped to act as a catalyst for the reaction. The solution was cooled at the room temperature and was stirred for 20 minutes, whereby the precipitate of the complex appeared, which were filtered on the suction and washed with the water and then ethanol. And the next, and the proposed structure for the copper 2 complex was on the screen and slide. So this is the structure proposed for the complex copper 2 complex. And the next is the result and discussion. All the metal complexes are colored, solid, stable at the room temperature, and non-hygroscopic in nature. The complexes are insoluble in water, but are soluble in some common organic solvents, such as dimethyl sulfoxide, dimethylformamide, that is DMF, methanol, acetone, ethanol, and chloroform. The observed molar conductance of the complexes in at room temperature consistent with the non-electrolytic nature of the complexes. Due to the low conductivity values, the analytical data of the ligand and their copper 2 complexes are present in the table 1. The table 1 is uh, this is the table 1, and with the elemental analysis found, environmental analysis revealed the observed and the calculated value for the hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen compositions of the ship base and their metal complexes are good agreement with the proposed structure. This is the electronic spectra and magnetic behavior of copper 2 complexes. The electronic absorption spectra ship-based ligand and copper 2 complexes recorded in the DMF solution. Copper complexes in DMF solution showed broadband at 2304. Sorry, maybe this is the error mistakes by mistake. And sorry, this is the by mistake. Which was the data was mistake. So in my conclusions of this synthesis was unsymmetrical ship base at their copper complexes were synthesized and characterized by the elemental analysis, molar conductance, magnetic susceptibility, measurements, solubility, infrared and electronic spectral data. A very strong band at 1625 per centimeter is characteristic of the azomethane nitrogen present in the ship base ligands. This was the shifted to 1006 and 10 to 1620 per centimeter in the complexes, which indicates the coordination of the metal to the azomethane nitrogen. The phenolic stretching band of the ship bases around 1184 to 1210 per centimeter, which is shifted to the 1150 to 1172 per centimeter in copper complexes, indicating the participation of the two phenolic oxygen atom to the metal ion. On the basis of magnetic moment, electronic spectra, molar conductivity, and infrared spectral data, a square planar geometry has been proposed for the complexes. Thank you.
The presenter is now open for question answer session. Any queries from the audience is most welcome. Okay. So before I call upon our next presenter, I would like to announce that at the end of this international conference, we would be having Best Poster Presentation Award and Best Paper Presentation Award, of which time constraint is also one of the deciding factor. So with that, I call upon the next presenter, Sheetal Sharma. And the title of the paper is Screening of Antibacterial Potential of Fungal Endophytes Isolated from Berberis aristata. So, Yitesh, Sheetal Sharma, Ms. Sheetal Sharma.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. May I take the opportunity to introduce myself?
Yes, if we have the PPT, you can share your screen as well. And without wasting our time, we can just get back to the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, it's visible. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. First of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank KHY University, SRA, and RCS for organizing such a wonderful event, International Conference on Science, Engineering, and Technological Innovations. Myself, Sheetal Sharma, I'm a PhD scholar under the guidance of Dr. Sarika Sharma from Anni University, Kadgar, Indora, HP, India. So the topic of my research is screening of antibacterial potential of fungal endophytes and isolated from Berberis aristata. Coming to the introduction part, medicinal plants, as we know, they have been constantly explored for obtaining novel secondary metabolites because this is the easiest method, cost effective, and moreover the faster method of production. Right? Endophytes, they are the intracellular microorganisms. They reside within the plant tissues without causing any damage to the plant. And in fact, they in turn promote plant growth and help the host, that is the plant in which they reside, to resist a biotic stress and also produce bioactive secondary metabolites. Keeping all these things in mind, we selected Berberis aristata for our study. Coming to the objectives, the first and the foremost objective is the isolation and identification of endophytic fungi from Berberis aristata. Second is the antimicrobial screening of isolated fungal isolates. Third is the standardization of various parameters for the production of bioactive secondary metabolites. So how we did it and what results we achieved. First, how we selected and collected the plant material. The plant material, it was selected from Himachal Pradesh only, which was growing in its natural habitat. The plant was brought to the lab and kept in Ziploc bags till further processing. Then we isolated and maintained fungal endophytes. The leaves and roots of the plant, they were cut into small pieces. They were washed under running tap water for 15 minutes, which was followed by drying the plant material between the folds of sterile paper. Then they were rinsed with glass beads. Then they were autoclaved. Then they were washed with 70% alcohol for 1 to 2 minutes in order to destroy all the bacteria, all the contamination. Finally, the plates and the roots, they were placed on PDA plates, which were supplemented already with 0.5 microgram per ml of chloramphenicol. The plates, they were kept at 30 degrees Celsius for 7 days of incubation period. The fungal colonies, then they were selected on the morphological basis, like their colony color, spores, and then they were maintained on PDA slants at 4 degrees Celsius for our proceeding studies. Next is identification of the isolated positive endophytes. For identification, we followed two steps, one morphological, another molecular. For morphological, what we did, we just plated the fungi on PDA and incubated it for 7 days. We just checked the colony shape, colony color, shape and size of both the sides of the petri dishes. Microscopic slides were prepared by Teasmount method using LCB, and they were observed under microscope in bright daylight conditions. For molecular identification, it was done by following ITS-PCR. Fungal DNA was isolated using CTAB method, and it was then PCR was then performed by using primers ITS1 and ITS4, having 20 bases each. It was performed in a Eppendorf, Hamburg, Germany PCR mixture reaction. It was carried out in master cycle gradient machine. The amplified products, they were checked on 2% agarose gel. They were then eluted and they were then sequenced. The obtained sequences were then compared with NCBI databases using the BLAST algorithm. Then the positive isolates which were screened during this process, they were further screened for antibacterial activity. Agar-Well diffusion method, it was followed with certain modifications for fungal endophytes. Pure cultures, they were inoculated in 250 ml of flask containing 125 ml of PDB. They were then kept in shaking incubator at 28 degrees Celsius for 4 to 6 days and 100 RPM. Fungal biomass was filtered using autoclaved glass funnel, filter paper, and muslin cloth. Fungal metabolites were extracted by solvent fractionation and Sox-led extraction methods using ethyl acetate. These are the following microorganisms, pathogenic microorganisms against which we checked our cultures. Bacillus cereus, it has the nature gram-positive and its MTCC number is 430. Similarly, all are given in this table, their nature and their accession numbers. Coming to the next is the production and extraction, which I explained in the previous slide also, that we followed submerged fermentation, and the metabolites so produced, they were extracted by Sox-led extraction method. The most important factor in this is the optimization of fermentation conditions. So for optimizing these conditions, we checked media, pH, temperature, inoculum size by varying single parameter at a time. The results so obtained are tabulated in this. Table 1 shows that plant part we used for isolation first was leaves. We took 120 segments from this and we obtained 58 fungal isolates. From roots, we took 120 segments and we obtained 54 isolates. Total was 240, and out of which we obtained 112. From these 112, we selected 10, 6 from leaves and 4 from the roots, which were the most positive and which was screened during positive primary screening and secondary screening. So the identified and colonization frequency of the fungal isolates are like this. Alternaria microspora, it was isolated from the leaves. It has total number of segmented segments incubated 120 and number of isolates obtained were 8. Similarly, this table shows what we isolated from the leaves and the root parts of the Barbaris eristata. This figure shows the cultures growing on PDA media. This is a 7 days incubation, after 7 days of incubation period at 30 degrees Celsius. The first one is the, I think I'm not able to, yeah, the first one is the Fusarium solani, second is the Colatotrichum, third is the Fusarium. Similarly, all are mentioned below here. The antibacterial activity. So our results elucidated that the BL4, that is Staphylococcus aureus, it has the highest inhibition activity of 24, because the zone of inhibition which we obtained was 24, and this culture was BL4 culture was Alternaria alternata. So Alternaria alternata, it showed maximum of inhibitory activity against Staphylococcus aureus. The diameter of zone was recorded as 24 mm, which was followed by BL5, that is Colatotrichum acutatum, and BR4, that is 20 mm. Similarly, the diameter of zone was recorded for each and every culture. The least inhibition activity was recorded against the E. coli by BL3, BL5, BL6, BR2, and BR3, as shown in this table. So coming to the effect of medium, we took Zapax medium, SDB, potato dextrose agar, and malt extract for our studies. Different isolates were grown on different culture media at 30 degrees Celsius and pH 7. The biomass accumulation and the secondary culture broths were tested by means of Agar-Well diffusion method against these pathogenic bacterial microorganisms. The optimal media achieved by this step was the PDB, potato dextrose broth, and it was kept as the basal media for succeeding experiments. Similarly, effect of temperature on antibiotic production and effect of pH was also measured. So the incubation temperature, it was then kept at 30 degrees Celsius. At 30 degrees Celsius, the highest inhibitory activity was shown, as shown in this graph. pH was maintained at 7. Inoculum size are different inoculum sizes like 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 2%, and 2.5% were taken, and they were added to different flasks containing basal media. The fermentation was carried out by keeping all other conditions at their optimum level and then assayed for antibiotic reduction. The optimum inoculum size was obtained as 2.5% because at this inoculum size, maximum inhibitory zone was recorded. So this was kept as our standard inoculum size for our succeeding experiments. So these are the results. Medium was PDB, temperature 30 degrees Celsius, pH 7, and inoculum size 2.5%. Coming to the conclusion part, our study revealed that endophytes, they produce bioactive molecules which can be of great significance to pharmaceutical industry. Since the discovery of Taxol, as all know that it's an anti-cancer drug, and it was first isolated from Taxus brevifolia, a plant. Nowadays, many endophytes from many different plants, they are being screened for the production of anti-cancer drugs. And similarly, many other drugs like antibacterial, antimicrobial, antimalarial, antiperiodic, many other drugs are being synthesized from endophytes from plants. These endophytes can be fungal, bacterial, algae, or any microorganism. But since fungal endophytes and bacterial endophytes, they are the most studied one, and they are the most reliable source also. So the fungal endophytes, they are the future research of microbial science. They are able to produce secondary metabolites as novel compounds. Moreover, they are able to produce biofuels, as as Engineer Janta was explaining in his presentation, that biofuel is being produced in Bangladesh. So endophytes can also be a good source for producing biofuels like biogas, biodiesel. In fact, many companies and many researchers, they are already working on this biofuels. So these endophytes, they can be used to cure a number of diseases like cancer, tuberculosis, diabetes, etc. So to the best of our knowledge, as we reviewed all the literature, there is just a single report cited for our endophytes from Berberis aristata plant. And we are the second one to report endophytes from this plant. And we are the first one to cite a report on Colatotrichum acutatum as an endophyte. Since till date, there is no report of Colatotrichum acutatum as an endophyte. It is a pathogenic microorganism, but it's not a potent endophyte reported till date. These are the references. Coming to the credentials, very recently we have published a paper in plant cell biotechnology and molecular biology, a Scopus indexed paper. Another we published in RDPSB. Another we have published in Journal of Interdisciplinary Cycle Research. And recently I was awarded as Best Women Researcher by NIBA also. So these are the recent credentials, and many are in the pipeline also. Acknowledgements to the Honorable Chancellor, Management of Vani University, Vice Chancellor, and for more, the one and above all is Professor Dr. Sarika Sharma, Dean and PhD Supervisor. Thank you. Thank you for organizing such a wonderful event. Thank you to one and all present here.
Well, that was a very nice presentation on your side, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your future.
Thank you, ma'am.
The presenter is open for the question and answer session from the audience. So if there is any question.
Hello. Yes, if you have not submitted your PowerPoint presentation file, you need to submit on this conference mail ID.
Sure, sir. I'll submit, sir.
Any queries from the audience is open now? So I guess there's no query. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Research Culture Society.
So with this, I call upon our next presenter, Lalram Liana and Beirosa Lal Duama. And the title of the paper is Preliminary Investigation on the Current Status and Incident Rates of Cancer in Surshik District of Mizoram, Northeastern India. So you're present. Please assert yourself.
Hello, ma'am.
Lalram Liana.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Silaram Dina, research scholar, Basic and Applied Science, Apex Professional University, Arunachal Pradesh, India. Thank you very much for having an opportunity to present my paper, Preliminary Investigation on the Current Status and Incidence Rate of Cancer in Sensitive Districts of Mizoram, Northeastern India. Introduction. Cancer is one of the most common diseases all over the world, and its incidence rate is very high in the state of Mizoram. The prevalence of cancer in sensitive districts of Mizoram is quite high and acts as one of the leading causes of death, especially among the elders. Of the different cancer types, lung cancer is considered to be the most predominant and major cause of death among cancer patients in Mizoram. Stomach cancer is also one of the leading cancer types, and especially in Mizoram, where the people standard of living is low and there is high intake of animal fat in food. Causes of cancer. The free radicals form in our body as a result of exposure to carcinogens, acids in cell damage and normal functioning, thereby leading to cancer formation. We all have a risk of developing cancer. Many cancers seem to develop for no apparent reason. However, certain risk factors are known to increase the chance that one or more of our cells will become abnormal and lead to cancer. Risk factors include smoking, obesity, alcohol, age, and ultraviolet radiation also. Study area. Serchhip district is bounded on the north and northwest by Aizawl district, on the west and south by Lungllai district, on the southwest by Myanmar, and on the east by Champhai district. Total area of Serchhip is 1,421 square kilometers. Serchhip has a population of 64,937 people. Serchhip has a sex ratio of 977 females for every 1,000 men. Its Serchhip district literacy rate is 97.91%, which is the highest district literacy rate in India. This is the map of Serchhip district. So occupation. The main occupations of the people of the district, dominated by the primary sector, is largely agriculture and allied activities. Occupations like animal husbandry, subsistence, cropping, and animals rearing, carpentry, etc. are the major second occupation in these towns. Small-scale piggery, only 1 or 2 pigs, and poultry farming, only 10 to 20 fowls, are very popular in the small towns. Agriculture is one of the important occupations. Being situated near Mud River Valley, Serchhip is the main producer of cash crops in Mizoram, famous for its garbage and mustards. These are material and methods. The study was hospital-based research, and the information were collected from Mizoram Population-Based Cancer Registry, PBCR, Civil Hospital, Aizawl, Mizoram. All the cancer data were based on hospitals' diagnostic records. The study was taken from 2015 to 2018 within Serchhip districts of Mizoram. Microsoft Excel was used to compare the various parameters of cancer patients, which includes the sex of patients, age groups comparison, and frequency of cancer occurrence in percentage. Results and discussion. The study reported 24 different types of cancer from Serchhip districts of Mizoram out of 381 cases. This is the data from 2015 to 18. From this data, we can see that here, stomach cancer is the #1 rank with a total of 69 cases reported, which accounts for 18.11% of the overall cancer cases reported from the study area from 2015 to 18. The disease is common for both male and females, and many factors can be attributed to the frequency of its occurrence. Next is from here we can see that lung cancer. Lung cancer is the most common types of cancer reported from Serchhip district during the study period. 51 lung cancer cases have been reported from the study area, which is 13.39% of the overall cancer cases, and it remains one of the killer diseases encountered among the elderly people. And that one is breast cancer. Breast cancer accounts for 9.45% of the overall cancer cases reported from the study area, which is 36 cases. Breast cancer is one of the most common cancer cases among the female cancer patients, and is also prominent in the case of Serchhip district cancer patients. Next, from here we can see that oesophagus. Oesophagus cancer is also one of the most common types of cancer, with a total of 30 cases reported from the study area, which accounts for 7.8% and is commonly encountered among the male and females. Next one is cervix cancer. Cervix cancer is also one of the common cases of cancer among the female. Cancer patients from Serchhip districts is 27 cancer patients suffer from cervical cancer during the study period. From this data, we can see that eye cancer and kidney cancer during the study period, there is only one eye cancer and only one kidney cancer during the study period of 2015 to 18. That is the least common cancer type reported from the study. From the next, this is the total number of cases cancer in percentage. From the result highlight, stomach cancer turns out to the most prevalent with 69 cases, followed by lung cancer and breast cancer, which is 51 and 36 cases respectively. Cervical and oesophagus cancer are some of the more common cases reported from the district during the study periods. This is the this is the age-wise frequency of cancer occurrence. From this data, we can see that in 2015, cancer patients were more at the age between 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and 70 to 79. In 2016, red from this, we can see that red color indicates 2016. In 2016, cancer patients were highest in the age between 0 to 9 and 10 to 19 and 20 to 29. In 2017, orange one, cancer are highest at the age between 30 to 39, 50 to 59, 80 to 89. From this data, we can see that there is no highest record in 2018 at any age groups as compared to the other years. So we know that cancer patients are less in 2018 during the study period.
You have 1 more minute to conclude, so
okay, ma'am. Yeah. This is the sex chart. In 2000, from this data, we can see that in 2015, there are 62 males and 52 males. In 2016, 52 males and 39 females cancer patients. In 2017, 51 males and 46 males cancer patients are there. In 2018, there are 39 males and 40 female cancer patients. From this data, we can see that male cancer is more in 2015, 16, 17, but female cancer is more only in 2018. So, conclusion, the present study highlights the prevalence of cancer among the older people of both sexes in Serchhip district, Mizoram, during the study period of 2015 to 18. However, in terms of sex, 204 males suffer from cancer as against 177 females during the study period. Age groups also plays an important part as far as the frequency of cancer is concerned, as the highest groups of cancer patients were reported from 60 to 69 years, which is followed by 50 to 59 age groups. Cancer cases declined below 40 age groups, and only few cases were reported from the study area, though 24 cases of cancer have been reported from Serchhip districts of Mizoram. Some cancer cases, stomach cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, esophagus, and cervical cancer turn out to be much more common compared to the other cancer types reported from the study area. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. I am Bulbul Ahmed, and I'm presenting the poster presentation on application of artificial intelligence in agriculture. We know that all the populations are growing. As the population is growing, hello, ma'am.
Yes, you're audible. Please continue. You're
Sorry,
audible.
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry. We know that as the population is growing rapidly, the demands of the foods is also increasing exponentially. And considering the traditional method of cultivation and techniques, we use traditional agriculture methods, which may not fulfill the requirement. So it is better to use new technologies input that can efficiently increase the food production. Technological development means such as robotic invention for crop management, model development, for interfering with the genetics and physiological development, statistical approaches, etc. So here I am demonstrating the 3 cases which are already studied by different authors. And first of all, the artificial intelligence is a bona fide field of computer science that deals with the simulated human brain by using machines, especially computer, which may or may not achieve with manual activities. AI includes robotic invention, machinery development that can affordably with high efficiency. And AI has wide application in agriculture field, including application development, tools for predicting crops, disease, genetics, variance, and water management, etc. So there are many cases. Here I've taken only 3 cases which I've recently studied. For one is stress responsive differential gene expression, and second is that plant disease identification using the images. They have used the convolutional neural network, and third case is that counting the number of spikes in wheat crops, which is studied in our institute, Indian Agriculture Research Institute. And further, in futures also, many other methodologies can be developed in such as identifying the wide ranges of problems along with the solutions, and that can be a benefit directly to the farmers. And these are the references, only 3 references. Next is, these are the few pictures I have taken from this researcher. One is robotic invention, such as that for irrigation, for planting and weeding also. And second, another picture is disease identification. Means they have used the different leaves of the plant which contain disease and also normal leaves, so that they can identify, they can study the pattern of this disease as well as normal. And based on this, they have also developed app that can use other people can use any kind of leaves, so that they can identify what type of disease this leaves is having. And other cases also, like spike count also. So this is all. Thank you, Anabri.
Very nice poster presentation. Now this is open to the audience for question answer session. Any queries from the audience? Is most welcome. I think we do not have one. So please stop sharing your screen. Call upon the next presenter, Umesh Niton and Dr. Jayaveer Singh Maheda, and the title of the presentation is Synthesis, Characterization, and Antibacterial Studies of Mixed Ligand Heterochelates. Please assert yourself if you're present. Umesh Niton and Dr. Jayaveer Singh Maheda. So please check, are they present? Umesh Niton.
Please continue with next.
Okay, so with that, I call upon the next presenter, Bushra Nasheer. The title of the presentation is Study of Zooplankton Community in Relation to Physicochemical Parameters of 3 Neglected Ponds located in Dhanbad, Jharkhand, India. Bushra Nasir, please
Yeah,
assert
ma'am.
yourself.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hello?
Do you have the
Hello?
PPT presentation?
Yeah, ma'am. Just a second.
Please-
Is my
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
visible now? Everyone? Yeah, hello everyone. Greetings of the day. This is Bushra here, Bushra Nasir from Vinod Bihari Mahathir Lanchar University. And the title of my paper is The Study of Zooplankton Community in Relation to Physicochemical Parameters of 3 Neglected Ponds located in Dhanbad, Jharkhand, India. The study was carried out for a period of 1 year. The study was carried out for a period of 1 year, that is from February 2019 to January 2020. And during this period, multiple yet common physicochemical parameters were analyzed that are considered for checking of the water quality, like dissolved oxygen, free carbon dioxide, total dissolved solids, total suspended solids, etc. Apart from these, certain major ions were also determined, their concentration was determined and analyzed. And apart from these, one more parameter, that is the biological parameter, the zooplankton, were also studied. Apart from this, in order to find out the relationship between the physicochemical parameters and the zooplankton abundance, the correlation was also calculated by using the Carl-Pearson's correlation coefficient. Okay, the main objective behind this particular study was to find out the current pollution status of these derelict ponds and their probable utilization for the purpose of fish culture. Location map and description of the ponds. Okay, without taking much of the time, I would just like to mention over here that this particular area, this highlighted black area, this section is the district Dhanbad, which is my study area. And these are the outlines of the ponds that were drawn by using, or actually this complete map was drawn by using a GIS map, that is the QGIS version 3.16.5 Hanover. And in the lower right-hand side section, these still pictures are mentioned that were taken from one of the sampling sites while doing the water sampling. This is the geographical description of those ponds. In the second column, we can see the names of those ponds and which are conventionally mentioned, these are conveniently denoted as S1, S2, and S3. This is the area of the ponds that was also calculated by using the same application, the QGIS. And next is, okay, these are the still pictures and these are the pond surface. As you can see, these are densely covered by the macrophytes. This particular Ridgely pond, the S1, the macrophytes that were recorded during the study period was the Eichhornia crassips, Typha latifolia. Approximately 80 to 90% of the pond surface was covered with Eichhornia crassips, while the 10 to 20% was covered with Typha latifolia. And the second pond, the surface of this pond was covered with Eichhornia crassips, Typha latifolia, and Lamna minor. This is the surface of the third pond, the Bokta pond. As we can see that the sampling was definitely comparatively easier in this pond as compared to these two ponds. And the aquatic vegetation that were recorded in this pond was Hydrilla verticillata, Spirogyra, Volvox, and Lamna minor. Methodology adopted. Monthly sampling was done during the study period, and since it was a 12 months period, and these 12 months were divided into 3 seasons as pre-monsoon, monsoon, and post-monsoon. And all of these standard methods, as per the American Public Health Association, AFA 2005, was employed for the sampling, preserving, transporting, and analysis of the water samples collected from those 3 chosen ponds to carry out the study. Okay, this is the table enlisting all of the parameters, the physical chemical parameters and zooplankton. I'm not going to describe about all of them. Just to highlight some of them, like transparency was calculated by the Secchi depth, or sometimes it is also mentioned as Secchi technique. And the free CO2 was calculated by titrimetric method using sodium hydroxide. Dissolved oxygen was calculated by using Winkler's modified method. BOD test was also done by using 5-day BOD test by incubating the water sample at 20 degrees C. Ions concentration were determined by using an equipment that is the flame photometer. Apart from this, the zooplankton was studied by using the Sedgwick rafter technique, and their enumeration and identification was done by using a research microscope, Magnus MLXI Plus. Now the results and discussion. This is the table which shows a variation of different physicochemical parameters during the study side of the water samples that were collected from S1, S2, and S3. So from this table, it was pretty clear that in terms of physical chemical parameters, whether it is be like electrical conductivity, total dissolved solids, total suspended solids, free CO2, dissolved oxygen, all these parameters, most of the parameters were unacceptable for the purpose of fish culture as per these recommendations. These are some of the recommendations that are being taken from very renowned studies, like we are having AFA, we are having B.J. Chingran, we are having a very, I'm unable to recall his name, but Boyd, yeah, Boyd, C. Boyd. He's a very renowned personality in the field of fish and fisheries. So yeah, all these parameters such as the water sample of this S1 pond is really not acceptable for the purpose of fish culture. And if it is intended to carry out the fish culture in this particular pond, the S1, the Ridgely pond, then the highest or the most management will be required as compared to S2 and S3, at least on the basis of these physicochemical parameters. This is the variation in temperature. These are the graphs that show the variation in temperature during the study period. And the highest temperature was recorded during the month of June, while the lowest were recorded during the month of December to January. Here we can also see that the air temperature was always found to be 2 to 3 degrees higher than the water temperature, which supports multiple of the previous studies. This is the graph that shows the concentration of some major cations and anions that are studied during the study period from the S1, S2, and S3. Without taking again much of the time, I would just like to mention and highlight over here that the many of the studies suggest that the increase in this chloride ion is a very clear indication of eutrophication and organic pollutant present in that particular water system from where the sample is taken. These are the graphs that show the abundance and occurrence of different zooplankton groups monthly and seasonally, and a total of 30 species belonging to 5 groups of zooplankton were recorded from S1, S2, and S3 in total as Cladocera, Copypoda, Ostracoda protozoa, and Rotifera, out of which the rotifers dominated in all of the ponds, but most frequently occurring in the water sample collected from the S1. Approximately 60% of the total population that was recorded in S1, it was the rotifers. And the lowest number of zooplankton was recorded in the month of June, which we can see in this graph, while the peak was recording during December to January. Maximum number of zooplankton were recorded from the S3, which shows that definitely this particular pond is having better conditions for the growth, survival, and flourishment of the zooplankton. This is the complete list of zooplankton that were recorded during the study period. And here again, I would like to mention that many of the studies suggest there are multiple studies that confirm that the presence of these Brachiones species confirms the eutrophication in that particular water body, and same has happened in this particular pond. Yeah. So here in this S1, as I already have mentioned, that 60%, approximately 60% of the total population was covered with the Rotifera, and Brachiones belong to this group, that is the rotifers. And these were frequently recorded, frequently found to be occurring in this S1 water sample collected from this one. Statistical relevance. So the correlation among the physicochemical parameters and zooplankton groups and zooplankton abundance. I'm not going to explain much, just to highlight a few ones, like from this table, this one was for the S1, this for S2, and this one was for the S3. Okay, few things I would like to mention over here, that from this table, many supporting results, as well as at the same time, we have got some contrasting results. In supporting results, what we have got is that increase in temperature decreases the dissolved oxygen concentration in the medium. Increase in temperature increases the biochemical oxygen demand of the medium. But at the same time, another point, what we have reported that increase in temperature decreases the BOD also. Why it would have happened? That might be due to some other cumulatively affecting factors like floating debris, pH, and absence of certain kinds of aerobic bacteria. Apart from this, some confirming results to the previous studies include like increase in dissolved oxygen, increases in total the zooplankton community, decrease in temperature. It causes a negative effect. So basically, as we have seen that the peak was reported, the peak zooplankton community was recorded during the month of January, December to January, which confirms that yes, zooplankton require comparatively lower temperature and higher dissolved oxygen, because they are pretty much dependent on the dissolved oxygen in the medium. In conclusion, what we have reached to the conclusion is that on the basis of physicochemical parameters, whether it is in terms of TDS, dissolved oxygen, biochemical oxygen demand, or the ions, the water from the S1 or the Redgley pond is the most polluted and in the very worst condition, at least at present. And it is having macrophytes like Eichhornia and Lamna, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier as well, that presence of Brachiones species, rotifers, and Keratella shows that this pond is highly eutrophic. So definitely, if fish culture is intended to be practiced in out of these ponds, if we are given the option, then definitely S2 and S3 are better options. And I think S3 is the best option out of these three. So yeah, that was all. Thank you very much. Thank you a lot.
That was a very nice presentation. It is open to the audience.
Complex against E. coli, B. subtilis, yes, uris, yes, types, yes, delicious, and yes, maricinus species is reported. All the tested complex shows the higher antibacterial activity as compared to, yeah, yes, it's compared to the free ligand, metal salt control, and the standard drug Clinion. Yeah, it is. Yeah, this. Okay. The actual introduction is the coumarin and its derivative have the attracted considerable interest because of their various physiological and the biochemical properties. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Yeah, NovaBiome is the natural products isolated from soil sample containing the streptomyces, spheroids, and his clinical use for the treatment of the bacterial infections. The certain type of the pyrofused coumarins are reported to have antimicrobial activity, and the certain amino and acetyl amino coumarins are reported have antioxidant activities. So like that, here we are taking the cleoquinol is the attendant symptoms in the human clinical trials. Enacting a renewed interest in its thermodynamics and the linking its possible beneficial therapeutical action to the chelation of the copper in the brain. Recent reports indicate that CQ also mitigates disease neurological symptoms in the mouse model of these disorders. The experimental, now here is the some description is there. The experimental, the unnegativity biodynamic ligand were synthesized by the condensation of various 3-coumarin methylpyridinium salt with aromatic ketones in the presence of sodium acetate and acetic acid. The water solution of copper nitrate was added to the dimethyl formamide solutions of ligand, followed by the addition of glucone in ethanol. The pH was adjusted to 4 to 6 with the dilute NaOH sodium hydroxide solution. The resulting solution was a reflux for 7 hours and then heated over steam bath to evaporate up to the half of the volume. The reaction mixture was kept overnight at room temperature, and we got the product here. We characterized the product by the NMR, then C13, and then FTIR. Also, we are done here the elemental analysis like the CHNS elemental analysis. In addition to that, we are checking here the THA. Yes, the TGA. We are done here the TGA and the TGS. We are getting the results like the in the compound 1. We are getting the 50 to 90 degree. The loss of 2 lattice water molecules. Then at the temperature 90 degree to 220, the loss of 2 coordinate water molecules, and then the removal of ligand and CQ ligands, and finally the leaving of the copper oxide as the residue remain as it is. There one graph is there. In that graph we shows the how to decompose our compounds with respect to the temperatures. And one more data we are considering here, the minimal inhibition concentrations. In that we are taking the 3 compounds, and we are comparing with the siliconol, ciprofloxacin, and fluconazole. So with that, we are comparing our ligand compounds. So this is here, and finally, I would like to share the conclusion. All the synthesized compounds were screened for bioassay. The heterochelates exhibit strong activity against the gram-negative and the gram-positive microorganism. In compositions with both the ligands and the metal salt, the copper-2 heterochelates were more active agents against one or more bacterial strain, thus introducing novel class of metal-based bacterial agents. The kinetic parameters, especially energy of activation, are helpful in assigning the strength of complex. The calculated EA value of the investigated complex for the first dehydration step were in the range 9 to 12 kilojoule per mole, and based on the activation energy values, the thermal stability complex in the decreasing order. The copper compound 2 chelates, the 1, 2, and 3. This is the decreasing order of that heterochelates compound. So this is all the presentations from me. Thank you very much for listening very carefully and giving the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Umesh.
Thank you, Krishna. So a very good afternoon to everyone, respected chairperson and my dear friends. I'm introducing myself. I'm Arjun Murali, PG scholar, and my guide, Dr. Ansal K.A. We are from Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering from St. Kitts College of Engineering, Kerala, India. Today, I would like to present my paper, the poster, entitled Design of an ELC Resonator is a reusable microfluidic sensor for blood glucose estimation. So from the title itself, this is my poster that I have designed for the presentation. For the explanation, I'm using my PowerPoint presentation. So from the title itself, you can see that this is a sensor for a blood glucose estimation. So from the title itself, we can say that we can guess that it is about the diabetes. Okay, so we know that this diabetes, it is a type of a metabolic disease which is identified by hyperglycemia. So we know that it is a state in which our body cannot regulate the blood sugar level. So it is due to the defects in our insulin secretion. So it is presumed that 1 out of 2 people go undiagnosed. So if it is diagnosed in the early pre-diabetes stage, so we can prevent this diabetes from progressing to type 2. So by best utilizing this science for developing affordable, cost-effective medical technologies for effectively addressing diabetes. So as an attempt to resolve this growing health challenge by devising cost-effective technology for regular screening and for early diagnosis, a microwave-based methodology for blood glucose estimation is presented here. So in this, my proposed microwave-based measurement scheme, it is a minimally invasive and it provides ultra-fast results. And therefore, it is a good contender among the continuous monitoring methods. So here, what we do is that the electromagnetic properties of the blood sample, such as permittivity and conductivity, it may vary with the concentration of the glucose amount. So to which these microwaves are sensitive. So by studying this variation in the reflection and the transmission parameters of the design sensor, the blood glucose can be estimated. So in this work, the aqueous solution of glucose as well as the blood sample from animal, especially goat, are used for the study. So here the proposed measuring strategy are used as a primary screening method for the blood glucose monitoring. So on moving to the methodology, first for the design of microfluidic channel, here firstly it is associated with the reusability of the sample holder. So we know that the microfluidic channels that conveys the glucose or the blood sample that have to be regularly cleaned or sterilized after each measurement. So as the sample is a signature in the tract, so which will affect the as well. Second thing is that it is associated with the sensor. Since the sensor comes in direct contact with the test sample, the sensor too also has to undergo some frequent sterilization procedures. So I suggest a disposable sample holder here. So due to the availability in a sterilized state and the convenience and also the cost effectiveness and the disposable sample holder, so this all focused and envisioned as a solution of the future for the fast replacing of the conventional microfluidic channels. So on moving to the sensor design, the sensor actually it is designed progressively from a conventional rectangular complementary split ring resonator that is separated as CSRR. Okay, so this sensor, it comprises of a transmission line and a resonator as on the ground plane, so that we can see in the upcoming slides. And here I have used the substrate Rogers RT5880 and with copper metallization on the sidewalls. So here on the first design, I have used a modified rectangular CSRR structure. Here this structure, this sensor resonates at a frequency of 2.6 gigahertz. But in order to increase the electric field concentration, so I have superimposed it. Then I go to the second design, that is I have superimposed the previous design with its mirror counterpart. So this sensor has a resonant frequency of 2.31 gigahertz. So although this sensor is more sensitive than the previous design due to this enhancement in the average field intensity. So this design also needs further improvement. So as we have to get the sample holder in the center of the resonator. So due to that, I have gone to the design tree. In this design tree, we have been using the CELC resonator with embedded cavity and metallized sidewalls. Here, this we can see the sensing arm can be visualized. And here, this sensing arm, it is act as a parallel plate capacitor of a plate area. So this field concentration can be amplified by the increasing the plate area alone itself. So this here in this electric field intensity distribution at the sensor resonant frequency, it is about 1.9 gigahertz. So on comparing with the all three design, the design tree, that is this design, in this design, it has this field is calculated at the center point of the sensing region. So this tree has the densest concentration of the electric field. And also this field intensity is reasonably uniform throughout the sensing region. So apart from that, this design, it possesses exceptionally high quality factor, and also it is very suitable for characterizing low loss samples. So we are moving forward this design tree. On to the measurement and result, I've been used the photolithographic fabrication technique adopted in this realization of this proposed sensor. And here the samples that have taken from the freshly collected goat blood, and also the controlled amount of D-glucose is then added to the blood specimens as well. And also I have estimated this reference sugar level of the blood glucose was 88 milligram per DL. And also these samples then are injected into the custom manufactured borosilicate glass capillaries. So we will make use of this borosilicate glass capillaries, and we will place the sample inside that borosilicate glass capillary, and we will place it in the center of the resonator. Then that's how we will measure the result. So on measuring the result of this aqueous glucose and blood sample, as we can see here, the frequency of the sensor at the unloaded condition is 1.71 gigahertz. So when the empty glass container, when it is placed in the sensing region, the resonant frequency is about to be shifted to 1.6856 gigahertz. So we can see from these figures that the measured transmission response when samples under test are aqueous glucose solution and the gold blood sample. So while testing the sample of aqueous glucose solution, the sensor is observed to have a sensitivity of 0.0185 megahertz per milligram DL raised to -1. On the other hand, when the blood sample are tested, the sensor is found to be more sensitive, it having a sensitivity of 0.056 megahertz per milligram DL raised to -1. So this reduced sensitivity in the case of aqueous sample, as the sensor sensitivity tends to saturate at higher permittivity levels. So it is well known that we know that the blood samples that have much lower dielectric constant compared to the aqueous solution. So it shows a better distinguishability. And also we can see in this third, that is the curve shifted frequency shift of aqueous glucose and blood sample, that the glucose concentration and the deviation in the frequencies from the unloaded resonant frequency, it shows a good quadratic correlation. That is a curve fitted plot that is represented here. And on to the result, where this delta FA and delta FB are the measured frequency shift in the megahertz, that is correspond to the aqueous glucose and the blood sample respectively. And this proposed sensor, it is compared with the conventional several glucose monitoring microfluidic sensor. And the proposed sensor, it exhibits an improved performance compared to the previous and existing conventional resonating structures. So on to the conclusion in this work, this design of a reusable microwave microfluidic sensor for monitoring blood glucose concentration, and the reusability is perfectly befitting the current global trends, economically friendly technology. And also this proposed sensor, it has a CELC geometry and possesses a higher sensitivity compared to the other conventional sensor design. And the overall sensitivity of this sensor is improved compared to the other sensor, as I mentioned earlier. And the most prominent advantage of this proposed scheme is that the reusability. As I have mentioned that if this result of this detection becomes extremely fast by implementing the usage of this biocapillary tubes. And this method is quite economical as well. And there is an abundant scope in this characterization on the various other biological as well as chemical samples. And also this study can contribute more towards the microwave-based blood glucose monitoring discipline as well. And these are the reference that I have gone through the study. And thank you. And this comes to the end of my poster presentation. And thanks to everyone and each of you and the chairperson who are all patiently listened my presentation. And once again, thank you to KR National University, Scientific Research Association, and the Research Culture Society for giving me an opportunity to present my topic. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Neha Kumari Narendra C. Gohil, and I'm from the MS University. I'm from MS University as working as an assistant professor. Today I'm going to discuss about one of my research paper, and which is entitled with synthesis, characterization, and in vitro antimicrobial screening of some pyrazolal pyridyl substituted dicoumarins. Basically, my research area is depend upon the synthesis of various coumarin derivatives which possess pyridyl substitution, pyrazolal pyridyl substitution, benzofuran substitution, likewise that. And in my research work and in this presentation also, the core moiety is coumarin. Okay, here I'm starting with the introduction of coumarin. Coumarin is well-known aromatic lactones, which is shown over here, the structure of coumarin. And the first isolation of coumarin has been done by Vogel in 1820 from the fruit of tonka bean tree. And the scientists will get a white crystalline solid material as the coumarin. So, and the name particular coumarin, which is come from the Caribbean word kumaroa, which is known botanically at one time is Comorona odorata albuminate. Okay, and
from this basic structure, we can give the IUPAC nomenclature for coumarin is 2H1-benzopyran 2-on. Here is a tonka tree from its fruit, and what we can see that is a seed. From that we can get or isolated the coumarin compound. So in nature also, in various plants we found coumarin, which I have shown over here in cinnamon, in strawberry, in sweet wood fruit, and then lavender, and etc. There are some natural elements are there from which we can isolate it coumarin. Okay, now furthermore, application of coumarins. Coumarins can be applicable as in a medicinal way as well as in industrial applications also. Here, basically, coumarin has various biological properties like antimicrobial property, anti-inflammatory property, anti-cancer property, anti-HIV property, anti-coagulant property, as well as it has some industrial proper applications also. It has used as a fluorescent brightening agent. The example of 7-hydroxycoumarin, which is a good fluorescent brightening agent. Then it is also used in laser technology. Then a fluorescent indicator, optical brighteners, then light emitting diodes. Also, we can use various coumarin derivatives. Here, the another picture which I have shown in my poster is pyridyl substituted coumarins. Why? Because I have synthesized a number of pyridyl substituted coumarins on the basis of, from the literature survey, I will find there are variety of pyridyl substituted coumarin derivatives are there which possess various biological activities like antibacterial, antifungal, anti-HIV activity, antioxidant activity, CNS depressant activity, basically. And here the pyridine ring which we are showing over here, it is built up within the reaction. So now I'm going towards the experimental section. In experimental section, first of all, we are taking a reaction mixture. The reaction mixture is made up by here the structure, the 3-coumarinal methyl pyridinium bromide salt, which I have used as a starting material for the reaction for the synthesis of pyridyl substituted coumarin derivatives. And here you can see the alpha beta unsaturated carbonyl compounds which are known as coumarin chalcones. Okay, here also I have used coumarin derivative, and the important one thing is here I have taken pyrazoline substituted pyridyl derivatives. So all these 3 components have different type of biological properties. This coumarin has itself its biological property, then this pyrazoline substituted pyridine has its different type of biological properties which I have already get it from the literature survey. Why? When these 2 important biological active moiety can come together, and upon the Krohanke reaction condition, main here pyridine ring buildup is only because of the Krohanke reaction condition, where this coumarin salt react with alpha beta unsaturated carbonyl compound, means coumarin chalcone, in the presence of ammonium acetate and acetic acid. This particular condition is for Krohanke synthesis. And here I have prepared total 18 compounds having different types of substituent. First, here I have taken 3 pyridyl derivative, and in my second compound I have taken 4 pyridyl derivatives. So both have different type of biological activity. Now in the experimental section, all these 2 compounds get taken into the RBF in acetic acid and ammonium acetate, which is reflux over 8 hours around 160 to 170 degree temperature after the completion of reaction, which is observed by time by TLC. And after refluxing period is over, the whatever the reaction mixture I have, I get extraction. I will do extraction for that, and after that I will get an organic layer, which is upon Koloman chromatography the pure product has been obtained. So for total 18 compounds we have done Koloman chromatography purification, and we get 82% of pure yield from this particular experimental methodology. So here you can see Total 18 compounds have been synthesized, which have different type of substitutions like parent compound. All the substituents are hydrogen, then methoxy substituted compounds, then bromo substituted coumarin derivatives, which I have prepared in my research tenure. Now, all these synthesized compounds has been screened for their can be supported by or can be characterized by spectral analysis as well as elemental analysis. Here I have shown the spectral data for this. All these compounds I have taken only parent compound 6A compound for the spectral analysis. So here in IR spectrum we can see here a strong band has been observed around 1726 centimeter inwards, which is only because of the carbonyl stretching of delta electron ring, which is present in coumarin nucleus. Now, and the band observed around 1608 centimeter inwards and 1457 centimeter inwards, which are due to the carbon-carbon double bond and carbon-nitrogen double bond stretching vibrations respectively. Now for H1 NMR data, here total 22 protons are there in the region of 7.35 delta to 8.85 delta. One by one, I am going to discuss about all the protons. Here the multiplet is observed between 7.35 to 8.08 delta, which are corresponding to the total 15 aromatic protons, except here already I have mentioned all the carbons via 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbering, then 1 prime, 2 prime, then 1 double prime, 2 prime, then triple prime and quarter prime. Okay, so here total 15 proton has been observed in multiplet, except C5 triple prime, C3 proton, C5 proton, C6 quarter prime proton, C4 prime proton, C4 double prime proton, and C2 quarter prime proton, which all the positions are shown here in the structure only. And here a signal for C5 quarter prime, the triple prime has been observed as a singlet, this particular proton in pyrazoline ring. Okay, it observed at 8.36 delta. And C3, this proton which is present in pyridine ring, which is built up via Krohanke synthesis, and this particular proton, C3 proton and C5 proton, has appeared as a singlet at around 8.38 delta. And C6 quarter prime proton, this proton which is present in pyridyl substituted pyrazoline pyridyl substituted derivative, here C6 quarter prime proton has been observed as a doublet of doublet. So it is orthocoupled proton, so it has a coupling constant value 4.88 and 1.6 hertz. And the proton which is C4 prime and C4 double prime, which is present in both of the coumarin ring. So here both of these proton observed as a singlet at 8.82 delta. And C2 quarter prime, this particular proton has been appeared as a meta-coupled doublet. Here it is meta-coupled proton, so it is observed at around 8.85 delta, having a coupling constant value J is equals to 0.8 hertz. So upon this particular H1 NMR data, it is confirmed that the synthesized compound is only this one. So from H1 NMR also give 100% assurance for the total the synthesized compound is 6A only. Now coming towards the C13 APT spectrum. For C13 APT spectrum for parent 6A compound, total 24 type of non-equivalent carbons are present in this particular APT spectrum. Expected carbon signals are 24, and in C13 APT spectrum also we found 24 signals. And the most downfield signal, which is shown over here at around 160.08 delta, it is assigned to the carbonyl carbon of the delta electron ring of the coumarin. So And this inverted signal which we are showing in this particular C13 AVD spectrum, it is for 14 inverted signal due to tertiary carbon are present in compound. So it also confirms the compound is 6A only. Now the last spectral analysis for this particular compound is of mass spectrum. Mass spectrum of this parent compound has been also give assurance by showing M plus P around 586 MBizer value. So along with some other fragment peak also. So the appearance of this particular molecular ion peak at 586 mass unit supports the structure of 6A compound. So upon these four spectral analysis, we confirm that the synthesized compound is this only. Okay. So here in our synthesis, basically I am a synthetic person. So here we can see this pyridine ring is going to be built up via this particular Krohanke synthesis. Now, after that, after the synthesis of all these compounds, all these total 18 synthesized compound has been screened for their antimicrobial activity against various bacterial and fungal pathogens, especially the compounds were tested against 2 gram-positive bacteria, and that are Bacillus subtilis and Staphylococcus aureus, and 2 gram-negative bacteria, and that are Salmonella typhi and Escherichia coli, and 2 fungal pathogens that are Aspergillus niger and Candida albicans. Okay, so here you can see here there are some of the compounds which show good to better to best antimicrobial activity against various bacterial and fungal pathogens. Basically here, and all these synthesized compounds, the value of their antimicrobial activity has been compared with the standard drug which are there already in the market, like ampicillin, ciprofloxacin, norfloxacin, gisofulvin, like I said. So after comparison with the value of this MIC value of this standard drug and photosynthesized compound, after comparison we came across the compound 6F, then 6G, 6H, then 7C, 7E, 7F, 7H, and 7I. These compounds show good antibacterial activity against gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria as with compared to drug ampicillin and norfloxacin. Okay. Now some of the compounds like a 6A compound and 7C compound which show good antifungal activity against Candida albicans with compared to this particular gisofulvin antifungal drug. So here in the conclusion, I would like to tell you about after synthesis of these particular compounds, as well as after having the value of their antimicrobial screening, it was concluded that there is an ample scope of developing this type of derivative as a good lead compound for a development of new antimicrobial agents. Okay, so and acknowledgement, I would like to highly acknowledge my principal of M.K. Amin Padra College and the university, the MS University of Baroda, for providing me necessary facilities and encourage me to participate in this particular international conference. Thank you so much.
End of the day. So we end with the first day of our international conference on science, engineering, and technological innovation. I would like to end with the honor towards Dr. C.M. Patel, who is the chairperson of this Research Culture Society and the association member of this organizing committee, Professor Natalia Morkum, who is the head Automation, Computer Science and Technology Department, Kryvyi Rih National University, Ukraine. So since our objective was to come together and have a very discussive session, on improving the theory and practices of various disciplines on science and technology and advancement in the common citizen life by improving in the day-to-day life innovations with the intervention of new technologies. The aim of the conference was to provide the interaction stage for researchers and practitioners from academia and industries and various other fields to deal with the state of the art of advancement in their respective field. So with that, I would like to appreciate the audience for their patience, coordination, and for all the presenters who contributed to this conference with their content and new innovative ideas, adding up to their day-to-day life success. So with that, I come to an end with the success of the first day of the conference. And I would like to thank the chairperson, the session chair of the first session, and as well as the second session, Professor Vitali Thron, the Dr. Pakkuluri Kiran Sri, Dr. V. Kavitha, and S. Balakrishnan with that. And adding to the second session, Professor Irinia Zalsef Dashnyaya and Dr. Shailesh Shah, Dr. Meet Kamal and Dr. Eral Upadhyay, Dr. Amit Parekh and Dr. Jessica. So it was a wonderful day having you all as the best presenter and the best audience with all their ears and with all their efforts to make this a successful session. So we would be having the second day, two sessions of presentation again in this international conference. So that is all, and I sign off for today. So have a nice day. Thank you.